Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that this House considers property service charges. It is a privilege to bring this important debate to the House today, and I thank the Backbench Business Committee for granting it. I remember vividly the day, over 20 years ago now, that I picked up the keys to my first flat in South East London. It took time to get into a position where my salary was sufficient to secure a mortgage and to save up the deposit, but I managed to do it. I spent the first few weeks on a mattress on the floor, whilst I saved for a bed. But it was the most amazing feeling in the world to own my own home. Now, I was fortunate enough to have purchased the freehold, so I never had to face paying service charges that I couldn't afford. I never had to rely on a third-party management company to make essential repairs. And when the time was right for me to move on, my flat was easy to sell. But others haven't been so lucky. They've bought leasehold on a private estate, and with it comes a life sentence. Today, I want to give a voice to those people on the hook for ever-increasing service charges, trapped in homes they can't afford but can't sell either, who thought they were buying their dream home, but actually it was the start of a nightmare. And make no mistake, this is no exaggeration on my part. People's lives have and are being ruined by excessive service charges. Madam Deputy Speaker, let me start by telling you about Park 25, a housing estate in Redhill. It was built 18 years ago and has 500 homes, a mixture of houses and flats. It is a contemporary and stunning site with the type of homes that people want to live in. It is particularly attractive to key workers like doctors and nurses due to its proximity to East Surrey Hospital. Like many new estates, it was built by private developers with no arrangements made for the local authority to adopt the communal land after completion. So Firstport was appointed as the property manager to maintain the estate. This means residents of Park 25 pay an expensive service charge to Firstport on top of their mortgage, on top of their council tax, for pretty basic services. And these service charges are going up significantly every year, driving some of these homeowners to the absolute brink. I first became aware of this issue when I met Louise, a single mum, at my first ever surgery last year, a meeting I will never forget. She told me how she purchased a one-bed flat on Park 25 when they were first built, but the service charges quickly increased, becoming unaffordable for her, in part due to the expensive biomass communal heating system. In desperation, she tried to sell, but 3 times over she lost her buyer. She now lets out the flat and has moved back in with her family, unable to access the equity that would allow her to buy somewhere else. She is trapped, not able to move on with her life. And then there's Alfie, who purchased a 2-bed flat in 2018. He was thrilled to get on the property ladder at the age of 23, thinking it was a valuable investment. His first service charge payment was just under £2,200 per annum. 6 years later, it is over £3,600, a 70% increase. For that, he says, they basically cut the grass and insure the building. When heating is included, it gets even worse due to the biomass system. The first amount becomes £3,400, going up to a whopping £8,000 per annum, a 135% increase. And Madam Deputy Speaker, again I remind you that he's paying council tax and a mortgage on top. Alfie did consider challenging the service fees at tribunal, but he was advised by the Leasehold Advisory Service that for any chance of success, he'd need to appoint a surveyor to review the service charges. But to do this, they needed a recognised tenants association. And to set this up, over 50% of leaseholders needed to agree. In the case of Park 25, he quickly found this to be an impossible task, as many rent out their properties, so are not easily traced. With that door closed to him, he tried to sell his property for over 2 years, even for £50,000 less than he bought it, just to cover the mortgage. There was lots of interest, but every time the potential purchaser found out about the service charges, they withdrew. Alfie says, understandably, nobody wants to buy it. The We Buy Any property companies won't touch it, and even the auction sites, which run a no-sale, no-fee policy, don't want to take it on. I will, of course, give way.
Can I commend Honourable Lady for Reigate for bringing this forward, and the fact that with so many in the House would be an indication of the importance of it. In my own constituent of Strangford, I've seen an increase in problems with people who bought their house or flat many years ago who are now facing increasing difficulties over the level of charges, unexpected cost increases, poor communication or service quality. Does the Honourable Lady not agree that a service charge can never be seen as a blank cheque for the owners, and the spend of charges must be itemised and clear?
I thank the Honourable Member for that intervention, and I do completely agree. Going back to Alfie, to add insult to injury, he told me that First Port charges an £80 administration fee if payment is not made within 30 days of demand. In 2023, he received this fee on Christmas Day, whilst in discussions about a payment plan to settle outstanding fees. First Port refused to remove the charge in spite of his financial struggles. I will in just 2 seconds. Alfie has now left the UK and is renting his flat out at a loss because that is the only option available to him. I will, of course, give way.
Highlights this problem of residents being charged late payment fees. I have a number of constituents who never received the original letter demanding payment, who are then being charged these late payment fees despite not knowing a payment was due. Does she agree with me that the kind of lack of communication there is another critical issue here that we've got to address?
I thank the Honourable Member for raising that, and I completely agree that that is very much an issue, and I have heard that issue as well. Madam Deputy Speaker, Alfie and Louise sadly are not alone. So many other people on Park 25 find themselves in the same situation, trapped, unable to sell and move on with their lives, wishing they had never bought the property in the first place. Sam, another resident, said, "It's not an exaggeration to say this is ruining people's lives. He has a wife and child and wants to have another, but he can't move to a bigger property as he can't sell this one. It is literally stopping them growing their family. He even tried selling his flat for £80,000 less than the valuation, and he still couldn't sell it due to the service charges. This is devastating for them as a family."
Will she allow me?
I will, of course.
I'm very grateful. As a constituency MP, I've had some appalling experiences with First Port. At Oak Lodge in Hockley and at Temple Way and King George's Court in Rayleigh, the latter a 4-storey McCarthy and Stone development that they manage, where the lift was out of action for almost a year. Isn't the fundamental problem with First Port that they are ultimately owned by several offshore venture capital companies who are very aggressive in seeking revenue from their tenants, but don't seem to be very willing to provide a decent quality service in return?
I thank my honourable friend for giving that very useful context, and I will come on to this further in my speech. I think this is one of the challenges we have. Property service companies are seeking to make a profit, yet they are unregulated and they are free to do as they will, and it is for this place to get a handle on that. And I hope today we can constructively think about the potential solutions to address this problem that I know across this House we all recognise the scale of the issue, and we don't want our constituents to continue to face this. And I'm afraid to say First Port aren't covering themselves in glory. I've now heard hundreds of times over about their lack of responsiveness, lack of transparency on costs, and inadequate explanations of service charge increases. Residents have told me about being billed for services they've never received, like window cleaning, with no avenue to formally challenge and remediate. Any opportunity to charge a resident is used to the full. All of these things are symptomatic of an industry that prioritises extracting maximum value from leaseholders, regardless of the human cost. And that's because there's no incentive for property service companies to act any differently, because it's incredibly hard for leaseholders to remove them. So they have free rein to pretty much do what they like. This fundamental power imbalance must be addressed, and it must be easier for leaseholders to take their business elsewhere. Park 25 service charge for the year ended 30th of April 2026 is estimated to be just under £1.9 million, 13% higher than last year's estimate. The increase in cost is primarily for the future replacement of playground equipment, street lighting, road repairs and other infrastructure. Park 25 residents are also paying council tax for exactly these type of things outside the estate. Madam Deputy Speaker, out of the £1.9 million service charge, First Port keeps around £142,000 in fees, which works out as just under 8% of the total service charge. How easy was it for me to find this £142,000 number in First Port's breakdown? Not very. I had to total up numbers across many pages of costs. There wasn't a nice, neat summary at the front showing the total amount. Now, this 8% may or may not be out of kilter with industry. I found it difficult when researching to confirm one way or the other, which is an issue in itself. But the key point to recognise here is that there is absolutely no incentive or requirement for First Port to keep the cost base low. In fact, the more money spent on maintaining the estate, the more people they employ to deliver services, the smaller the percentage proportion their management fee appears to be. A perverse incentive indeed. Now, it would be very easy for me to berate property service companies throughout this speech, and I suspect others will take up that mantle during this debate. But we must recognise that it's the current system that allows them to operate in this way. I will, of course, give way.
Honourable Member for giving way. My local district council, South Derbyshire District Council, have taken the bold and rather commendable decision to ban any of these new management fees, backdating it to January 2025. But that doesn't help people that have already got homes that they bought before 2025. So I wonder whether she agrees with me that we should press on our government to make legislation so that we can help people that are tied into these arrangements come out of them.
I thank the honourable member for that point, and I think an important debate that we need to have today is about what we do going forwards for those people who haven't yet bought a leaseholder, but also what we do to help our constituents right now in the situation, and I'm really interested to hear everyone's different views on that. So these companies, they are a symptom of the problem. They are opportunists making money from an inequitable system. It is this House that must take responsibility for addressing the intrinsic unfairness and urgently make the changes needed to unshackle leaseholders. So today, I hope we'll hear honourable members' views on solutions as well, not just issues. We can't keep building new housing estates under this same model, perpetuating the problem. This is increasingly important in light of the government's ambitious plans for building 1.5 million new homes over the next few years. I have to say, when the time comes for my children to purchase a property, if nothing has changed, I will be strongly advising them to not purchase a leasehold on a private estate. To start us off, I will give you my view. I think making it easier for leaseholders to change property service company is important, as is better regulation and higher standards. But they aren't going to fundamentally transform the situation. What is needed, what is critical, is a change to the default model so that homeowners aren't paying the council and a private company for the exact same services. One sensible and equitable option would be that local authorities are obliged, in all but the most exceptional of cases, to adopt communal land and infrastructure on completion of new estates. But for this to work in practice, developers would also need to be obliged to ensure the infrastructure meets the council's standards before transfer. That way, owners of leasehold properties are put on an equal footing with everyone else, paying for communal services once through their council tax. That would certainly deal with future issues, but what of those, like my constituents, your constituents, already trapped? Maybe something more radical is needed, like a mandatory direction to all local authorities to adopt communal land where requested by existing estates. Difficult, I know, in this current financial environment and the likely variability of estate quality, but it would certainly address much of the issue and allow my constituents to sell their properties and move on with their lives. I know this government is also keen to move forwards and towards common hold arrangements, especially for flats, which essentially put management of the estate in the hands of leaseholders themselves. There are some benefits to this over the current model, but it's not the silver bullet needed and brings its own set of problems. Anyone like me who has been involved in a resident association or similar organisation, or indeed even just understands human nature, will know that most people don't want to pay out for significant works. So the works just won't get done. And in time, that will result in crumbling roads, failing roofs, and falling home values. Again, it will become difficult for residents to sell their properties. It's just another version of the same trap, and one that pits neighbours against each other. So I would urge the government to think again on plans to make common hold the default tenure for new build flats. I will, of course, give way.
I thank her for an excellent speech. She's making some excellent points. I really think the radical solutions are the end of solutions that we need to be looking at. I should probably declare an interest because I'm a director of a right to manage company who got so fed up of their freeholder failing to manage our building properly. We took back control, but as she rightly points out, that is not the end of the story. You still need to get a lot of people to agree on a lot of things, particularly building up that reserve fund is very, very difficult. So can I just encourage her to keep coming up with these ideas that are bolder than the ones that are out there at the moment, because it is a sticky problem to fix.
I thank the honourable member for his encouragement, and I will keep coming with the radical ideas. Just before I finish, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to raise the issue of education and information provision to home buyers. If most people knew the current problems with leasehold arrangements, they wouldn't buy them, or they certainly wouldn't pay as much for them. Now, I'm sure conveyancers will include warnings and information when managing the sale and purchase process, but it's not cutting through. People are sleepwalking into purchases with little or no understanding of the uncapped service charges they are signing up to. We must do more to make sure people are adequately advised and informed before signing on the dotted line. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would be most grateful if the Minister today could give their view on how best we can address the current power imbalance between leaseholders and property service companies, what role he sees a regulator for the industry playing in driving higher standards, and what default tenure model should be used for future housing estates to reduce the incidences of these issues in the first place. I would also appreciate the Minister's views on my suggestion to move to a mandatory adoption model after development completion. Thank you.